All right. Good morning, students. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to Classics 160B1. Meet the Ancients, Gateway to Greece and Rome. I, of course, am your professor, Dr. Rob Steffen, and today what we're going to do, we got two big objectives today, right? We are going to talk about what's actually going on in this course, right? How this course is actually going to operate. And then if we have time in the end, we are going to cover somewhere in the realm of like 99.999% of universal history. We're going to get us from the origin of everything up until people start getting interesting. Don't tell the biological anthropologists I said that, but that's what I think, and that's what we're going to try to cover today, so that starting next week with the rest of this class, we can talk about that other 0.00001% of human history where so many amazing things happen. So let's go ahead and bring up the projector and bring down the lights, and then we will get this thing fired up. All right. There we go. So, lecture 1.2, a short history of nearly everything. All right, so here's the class overview for today. We're going to start with announcements. As per usual, we are going to cover the goals for this course. All right. One of the interesting things with the general education program here is you can take a really wide range of courses, right? And what we're going to find here is that even though I do definitely want you to learn something about ancient Greece and Rome, there are also some larger, big picture skills that I want you to develop that are going to be useful for you no matter what you do, right? It's going to be a relatively small percentage of you, maybe 60 or 70 or 80%, who actually become classical archaeologists like myself, right? But for the rest of you, for those 5 other people in the class, I want to make sure that this is important for you as well. Then if you've not paid attention to anything so far, you're definitely going to want to tune in to assignments and grades. This is what we're going to do to talk about what you guys actually need to produce and what you need to do in this class in order to be successful. And my goal here is really to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be successful across a wide variety of different learning styles. From there, we're going to go into the actual logistics of the course, how this thing operates on a daily basis, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the kind of things that we need to do in such a large class in order to actually make it function, right? And then if we make it through all those things, we will spend the last few minutes covering the history of the universe from the very start of time until relatively recently. Then we'll pick up with the rest of it next week. Okay, so, all right, announcements. We start each day with announcements. Most of these are the same, right? Go ahead and put it in speaker view. I've spotlighted it, so you might have to have it in speaker view. Is this the case? Like, can you guys even get rid of my face on the screen, or is it just stuck there? Somebody let me know here.
I think it's spotlighted, so it's just going to stay there.
Oh, awesome. I love it. All right, perfect. You guys can't even get rid of me. Okay, the second thing is that if... so if you do put it in gallery view, I would actually say keep it in speaker view if possible, because that's going to allow you to see the text and stuff on the little projector screen over here. The only thing that's new and different this time, get on your radar, the first homework assignment for the class is going to be due a week from today, all right? And it's important to know that now because we're not going to have class on Monday. Monday's Martin Luther King Day. And so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. We'll talk a little bit about how that operates today, and then we'll cover that again on Wednesday. But just kind of get that on your radar, start thinking about it soon, so that you're ready to have that due by class next Friday. All right. Oh, other announcements. I don't know if you guys watched it last night, but the Arizona women's basketball team had a huge win over Oregon on national television on ESPN. This wasn't just like we squeaked it out at the end. This was a dominant performance. So I don't know if we have any players from the women's team in the class here, but awesome job. Really dominant performance. It's going to be a very exciting season. And then last night, I think the men's team played as well, but I didn't stay up late enough to watch the end of that. But anyway, basketball's off to a fantastic start. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about course goals, all right? And again, the thinking here is I want you to kind of have a sense for not just what we're doing in this class, but why we're doing it, all right? And the idea behind this is that if you know why you're doing something, you're going to be a little bit more invested in actually doing it and doing it well, right? Just telling you to go read some text that was produced 2,000 years ago, I can kind of understand where you might be coming from if you're like, what? Who cares, right? This is 2,000 years old. It doesn't matter anymore, right? But if we kind of have an understanding for why that's a useful skill to build, I think people will become more invested and you guys will produce better quality work in the end. Now, if you go to the syllabus, right, if you get online and go to the syllabus, you're going to see a handful of different learning objectives for the class, a handful of different student learning outcomes as a classics or as a 160 level tier 1 general education course. Really, for me personally, right, even though these things need to be in the syllabus, it boils down to 3 things, right? I want you guys to take 3 things out of this thing when you finish the class. So, thing the first, I do want you to learn a little bit about Greece and Rome, all right? You're going to learn skills in this class, but hopefully you just learn a little bit about it. It's super cool stuff. I'm going to try to make this as interesting as possible. But it's cool both in the sense that they really left a mark on the way that society operates today, and in the sense that it kind of gives us a really good sense for a way a totally different culture operates. And then the stories are just very interesting too. So that's part of it. Learn a little bit about ancient Greece and Rome. The second thing I want you to be able to do is engage with texts from an unfamiliar culture. Okay? And what you're going to find in this class is that the readings start out really difficult. All right? You're going to pick these up, and even if you've got some sense for Greek mythology or ancient history or whatever, when you first read these, you're going to be like, what the crap is this even trying to say? All right? And that's good. I want to challenge you here. When you get into the homework assignments, what you're going to find is I'm not looking for a quote unquote right answer. All right? I want you to do your best to grapple with these difficult texts, to make up your own kind of arguments, and then use evidence from those difficult texts to support those arguments. All right? So kind of forget any idea on those assignments of a quote unquote right answer. Really challenge yourself to try to figure out what's going on with these. And then third, what I want you guys to be able to do is develop a series of skills that's useful outside of this class. And we're going to see in a second kind of how that ends up working here. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in a little further. One person just mentioned in the comments that the slides are a little bit blurry. What I do want you guys to be able to do is make sure you can read this stuff over here, right? Over here, this is just something I copied and pasted off in an image. You guys can always get online to look at that stuff in more detail. You don't need to be able to read the really small print from the video itself, right? This larger print will be important. This stuff, not as much. Okay, so the way that this is going to work, all right, is that each of these things that I want you guys to do, right? Learning some facts about antiquity, gaining useful skills, engaging with difficult texts. Each of these things maps onto a different part of the course, okay? So lecture is going to be your kind of main avenue for learning about the ancient Greek and Roman world, right? The stories and the facts and the general trajectory of Greco-Roman history, that's what we're going to do in lecture here, okay? Then the useful skills component is going to come about through the research project that you guys are going to be working on throughout the semester, all right? And there's a series of different components to that project, each of which is going to teach you a different skill. And by the end, the hope is that you've developed a series of skills that you can then go use in whatever you do, right? So whether you want to be a biologist or a chemist or study medieval poetry or an artist, right? There are different things when it comes to communication or evaluating arguments that are going to be useful no matter what you do, okay? And then finally, engaging with texts. The way that you're going to do that, all the texts for this class are ancient texts, right? So you're not really going to read anything that's like less than 1,500 years old, all right? And so this is tough. I'm saying it right now. It's going to be difficult. That's okay. I want you guys to challenge yourself and realize that there isn't necessarily a right answer there. And then you guys can always work with your TAs to answer any questions that you have with those. Okay, now the way that this maps on to the actual functioning of the class is that kind of fact-based component, right, is going to be conveyed mainly in lecture, and those are mainly going to happen on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? So Mondays and Wednesdays, those are going to be the days where we're talking through the actual historical trajectory of the ancient world. Then the skills-based thing, right, which is going to be taught through this kind of semester-long research project, is going to occur on Fridays, right? So Fridays, what we'll end up doing, we'll catch up with any part of the story that we didn't finish. But in large part, what we're going to do on Fridays is I'm going to talk for a little bit, a relatively short amount of time, about some aspect of the project, okay? And then essentially, I'm going to let you guys go. And me and the TAs, we're going to hang out here, and if you have questions about it, or you want to work on it, or you want to bounce ideas off of it, off of us, we're here for you, right? We're going to be here, and we're going to help you out with that. If what you do, like what you prefer to do is after we kind of introduce these ideas, you'd like to go off and go do your research on the library website or start putting together a presentation or whatever the kind of component is, feel free to do that, okay? So Mondays and Wednesdays are going to be relatively full. Fridays are going to be based on the kind of skills in the project, and you're going to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how much time you spend in the actual video lecture. You got to be here to begin with. I'm still going to do attendance on Fridays, but it will not usually take more than half the class, although we will stick around to help answer questions. Okay, another question in the text. One question about attendance. I will get to that in a little bit. Another question, is it going to be similar to mythology last semester? Kind of, sort of. So I'm going to still be introducing the materials on Fridays. So last semester we had it where the TAs would take over on Fridays and kind of introduce part of the project, introduce part of the source. Because our TAs this semester come from all over the place, right? Spanish and Portuguese, and classics, and I don't know. Blake, I forget what Blake does. Don't tell Blake that. I hope he's not listening yet. But they're all over the place. So I'm still going to kind of guide you on Fridays, but it's going to be less of a lecture all the way through. Partial lecture. And throw in landscape. All right, Blake, my bad. That's my fault. And then you guys will have some flexibility in terms of whether you put the work in while you're sticking in the Zoom or you want to go off and work on your own. Okay, so in these Monday and Wednesday lectures, right, this is where you're going to get the kind of big picture historical trajectory. What I would love for you guys to be able to do at the end of this course, right, is tell your friend a story, right, from the kind of beginning of what we might call quote unquote civilization, right, up until the end of the Roman Empire, about kind of sort of what happened, why it's important, and kind of what we can learn about humanity through this evolution over those couple thousand years, right? Now, the lectures are going to serve as the primary content for the 2 exams, okay? So you're going to want to take good notes. The exams are going to be open note, so take really good notes. And part of the goal here is to build your listening and note-taking skills. So what you're going to notice as we go through is that I have a relatively small number of words on the slides compared to other classes that you might be used to. And what I'll try to do is talk a little bit about what's going on each slide. And then I'm going to try to teach myself here to pause for a second while you guys have the opportunity to summarize what I've been saying, all right? And that ability to take a lot of information and condense it down into something really compact is a very useful skill to develop. Okay, so that's Monday and Wednesday. Friday, again, what we're going to cover on Friday is the final project. This is going to be a big thing that's due at the end of the course, but you're going to have a couple things due along the way to basically build you from where you are now to where you want to be come, the end of April, essentially. Yeah, and I'll lead you step by step through the research process. And the goal, again, is to give you time in class to work on this, to ask questions, to work with me and the TAs, and really help you develop those skills. Because this is something, again, no matter what you end up doing, the ability to ask an interesting question, to figure out how to go about providing an answer for that, to figure out where to find information, to figure out how to take lots of different information and synthesize it together, right, into a coherent story. Those are really, really useful skills. And so that's kind of where that third of the class is coming from. All right, and then finally, like I mentioned, your homework assignments, for the most part, these kind of weekly writing assignments, are based on ancient texts. These are all old primary sources. They're relatively difficult. Again, this is a good skill to build. If you have the ability to pick up a text that's not easy to comprehend and make your way through it, this is a great way to develop those reading skills, to be able to kind of understand something produced in a different culture, which again is generally a good thing. And these will also give us kind of a sense for history from the perspective of the ancients themselves, right? Rather than the kind of big picture story that I'm telling, you're going to get their own particular point of view. Okay, so those are the goals for the course. Let's talk a little bit about the actual assignments that you guys have to produce. So we've talked a little bit about this, right? You've seen this chart a couple times now. The facts go with the lecture, and the way that you are going to get assessed on your lecture or on the lectures are 2 things, right? 1, you have a midterm and a final exam, and 2, I'm going to be taking attendance, right? Then the skills-based component, that goes with the research project, and there are going to be 3 components to that project. A research proposal, a kind of finalized research paper, and then the project itself at the end of the course. And then with these ancient texts, right, those go, the kind of reading ability goes with the ancient texts, which then are going to be assessed through these kind of weekly written responses. You can see here how everything breaks down, right? I tried to keep this basically as simple as possible. So you're going to go ahead and get a quarter of your grade from the reading responses, a quarter from the final project and its components, a quarter from the exams, and a quarter just for showing up and putting up with me. All right, so the exams themselves, I just got a question about this in the chat here. They're worth a quarter of your grade, all right? And they are open note, okay? So you guys are gonna do these during class time on D2L, all right? So go ahead and make a little note of those dates, Friday, March 5th and Wednesday, May 5th. Wednesday, May 5th is the last day of class. And at 12 p.m., right, 12 noon, you're gonna go ahead and sign on to D2L. You don't need to show up to a Zoom or anything like that. But you need to sign on to D2L then. That's exactly when the exam will open. There's gonna be some number of multiple choice questions, something in the 20 to 30 range, and then there will be an essay, okay? And the goal here is to test both the factual knowledge that you've built up and your ability to synthesize that knowledge into, some kind of more, some sort of larger argument. A couple questions. No, there is no, well, there will be one opportunity for extra credit for the course, and it's just a very small amount. But at the end with your projects, what we're going to do on one of the last days of class is have a little bit of a showcase. And so you'll have the ability, if you want, nobody has to present, but if you want to present and show all this hard work that you've put in, you'll have the opportunity to do that and earn a few points, but it's not a ton. Let's see, what else? Other questions? Any tests or quizzes? So it's just these exams, just the midterm and the final. There are no other kind of content-based quizzes. Let's see, do we only have 50 minutes as in a regular class? Yes, you only have 50 minutes for the exam for both the midterm and the final. And that's because they take place during class time. So if you have a class that starts at 1 p.m., you need to be done with the exam. So they're going to be relatively short compared to other ones. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and push forward here. Speaking of the exams, all right. So you'll notice that March 5th is the midterm. And normally after that, you would have a spring break. We have these like weird classes that are sprinkled into this semester here. And so what we're going to do in this class is it's not technically a spring break, but we're not going to have live in-person classes like this from March 8th to March 12th. Okay? And that doesn't mean that you guys should go down to like Rocky Point and get COVID or whatever. Okay? But I think that it's a very long semester and we need a little bit of time somewhere in the middle to kind of relax and rejuvenate. And so you will have an assignment during this week. It's going to be to watch a movie. And maybe I'll have you write something about it. But we're not going to show up in person during that time. Okay. So we'll pick back up. The first half of the class is essentially on Greece. Then we move to Rome. And so we'll pick back up with Rome after this on March 15th. Okay. The reading responses, these are due on Friday at class time. Okay. So like what I want you guys to be able to do is that I want these things submitted by the time class starts on Friday. Do that and you're going to be in good shape. I've already mentioned it a couple times. The texts are difficult and the reading responses, the goal is not to have a right answer, but rather to creatively put forth your own original argument and then support that argument with evidence from the text. Okay. Go ahead and pay special attention. There's a template online that's attached to the different, the submission folders. Check out that template. Other than that, you should be good to go. Get those in before class on Friday. And why don't we actually go check this out now? Can you guys go ahead and just fire up D2L, fire up your web browser, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows where this lives. So you can access it two different ways. You can either click on Assignments in the little menu bar at the top, and that'll take you to Reading Response 2. Even though it's the first reading response, it goes with week 2, so that's what you want to click on. Or you can access it through the content, right? So if you go to next Friday, right? If you go to content, week 2, Friday, it'll have the submission folder there as well. So you can access it either way. All right, so just take a minute, go ahead and do that. I'll take a look at the chat here and see if there's anything else we want to do. Question about the attendance quiz. I will get to that's going to come up in the next slide or the next 2 slides. So today is just a practice. Hang tight, and I'll talk more about that. Somebody is both hyped and terrified of the format. Don't be terrified. It's a wonderful format. You'll enjoy this. All right. Let's see what else. Oh, time zone reminder. That is a good idea. Okay. If especially kind of with COVID, if you're not in the Tucson area, all these times when I say like noon on Friday, that means Tucson time, noon on Friday. And that gets particularly weird halfway through the semester because it's going to change for everybody else, but it's not going to change if you're in Tucson. Which is good. We're doing things the right way here, by the way. This like daylight savings thing is hot garbage. Okay, let's see what else. Do I play Assassin's Creed Odyssey? Yes, I spent many hours playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The gameplay is good, but it's really just awesome being able to explore the landscape. If you start thinking about the final project, we'll talk about this next week, but like doing something based on that game would be very, very cool. All right, let's see, what else? Will there be time to ask individual questions at the end of class? Okay. In terms of questions, if I finish early, I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. Otherwise, you can email me, you can email the TAs. Never hesitate to reach out, right? Even though it's a large class, we're here and we definitely want to help you guys out. How are we approaching the other reading days? That's a good question as well. Even though we have this spring break that's not a spring break, the other reading days still apply, okay? So those are official university no class days, so we will not have class on those days either. It only applies to like 2 days throughout the semester for us, but you'll see when you go through the content of the course, those days are blocked out. What am I drinking today? I'm drinking Kirkland sparkling water, grapefruit flavored. It's really refreshing when you need a little pick-me-up before your class. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to move on. I hope everybody was able to find this here. If you weren't, play around on D2L. If you still can't find it, get in touch with your TA. Okay, now the final project, we're going to start talking about this more next Friday. But what it is basically some investigation into some aspect of the ancient world that you find particularly fascinating, and the end goal is to be able to portray what you learn about this from the ancient sources in a very engaging way to a broad audience. So your goal is to take something that's very nuanced and academic and jargony and detailed, and portray it in an interesting way to somebody who has no knowledge of the topic. Okay? Now there's a wide range there in terms of things that you could do. When you get online and you look at the assignment sheet, you could do like a documentary or a little like MS Paint like animation, or a graphic novel or a podcast or a travel brochure. There's a lot of options here, and you're going to have time again on Fridays to start working towards that. In preparation for that final project, you're going to do 2 written assignments. So there's going to be a very short research proposal that's going to be due in the middle of February. All right, that's where I want to hear what your topic is, kind of why you're interested in it, why it's useful for helping us understand things about the ancient world. And then in early April, you're going to have a final draft of that where it's expanded and where you start to actually answer some of the questions that you laid out in your original proposal. And then the final digital project will be due at the end of April. Okay, so the last component here, attendance quizzes. So I am going to take attendance. The way that is going to work is it's a 1-question D2L quiz. And at some point in time, every lecture, I will say, hey guys, it's time for a quiz. And you're going to go on to D2L and you're going to answer the question, right? And the question is the same every single day. And the question is, what color is Heracles? So this is our main man, Heracles, one of the greatest of all the Greek mythological heroes, right? And each day he's going to be some different color, right? So you're going to have a 1-question quiz. It's going to be, what color is Heracles? And I'm going to tell you what color is Heracles. Today, Heracles is looking blue, all right? So I want you guys to go ahead and get onto D2L and go to quizzes, go to the practice quiz with today's date on it, and choose blue as the answer. And if you were confused and you already tried this and you chose green or something, doesn't matter. This isn't attached to any grade today, but I just want to get you guys in the habit of doing it before we do it for real. So go ahead, take a minute, and I'll try to answer any other questions that are in the chat while you guys are doing that. All right, other questions. Are we going to Rome someday? Yes, absolutely, we're going to Rome. Rome is the whole second half of the course. And then if you play your cards right, we'll try to get a study abroad trip going over there. Have I played God of War? Of course I've played God of War. It's a fantastic game. Even though the most recent version isn't set in ancient Greece, they've really transformed the kind of whole narrative, and it's spectacular, highly recommended. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 Dr. Rob's rating. Game Review Fridays. Let's see. Should we take notes when we watch the videos, like the TED Talk for Monday, or is it just familiarize ourselves? So for Monday, this is going to be like the only time where I really give you something to watch. You don't need to take notes on that. In terms of these sorts of lectures, right? Once we get into the actual content, you've got essentially two options, okay? One is that you can take notes as you go, right? When I'm talking about Greece or Rome or whatever. Two, you can listen, try to take in the big picture, and then go back. All of these recordings are going to be posted on D2L under each of the days as MP4 files, and you can watch them as many times as you want. All right, did I read the Percy Jackson series? I actually read the first Percy Jackson book like a year ago. And it was because for like 3 or 4 years, every student, every one of my classes was like, oh, I'm taking this class because of Percy Jackson. And I had never read it. And it's pretty entertaining. Although I haven't seen it, but I heard that they really botched the movie. Can we do a project on ancient Greek and Roman religion? Absolutely. Somebody got 100% on the first quiz. Very impressive. You guys are off to a great start. Do I have a YouTube channel? I do, right? These are like when I post these as videos, they all live on YouTube. You can go check it out. A lot of people are saying 10 out of 10 don't watch the Percy Jackson movie. There you go. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward here. Can we turn in last semester's final project? No, you cannot. You could build off of it and say, hey, I've learned all this great stuff about a topic, and now I'm going to make it super duper extra awesome, by all means, but it can't be the same thing. Okay, course logistics. So a couple things here, all right? We are dealing with a relatively large class. We've got over 300 people now, and we need to do a couple things to make sure that this ends up working, okay? One is that we really want to try to channel a lot of the communication through the TAs. They're going to have answers to some of the stuff. They're not going to have answers to everything. Those things that they don't have answers to, they'll loop me in, right? So if you email Karen and Karen's like, that's a great question, I don't have the answer, let me loop in Dr. Rob, then I'll get in there. We'll get you an answer for sure. But that keeps the kind of emails manageable in a course of this size. That also gives you a sense, if you go onto D2L, there's also a page, depending on what you're emailing about, it tells you who to email. So if you have a question about a grade, you'll like want to email your TA first. And if you chat with them and you're still like, I just don't get what Karen's telling me about this, I'm here for you, right? Like I can jump in on that conversation too. But again, that's going to make things a lot more efficient overall. And then where do assignments go? Everything for this course gets funneled through D2L. So the weekly assignments are submitted in the assignments submission folders. The projects and then the papers leading up to that final project are submitted in the D2L submission folders. The quizzes for attendance are going to live under the quizzes. The exams are going to live under the D2L quizzes. The lectures, if you miss a class, the lectures are going to live under content. Go to whatever day it was you missed. It will be there by the end of the day. And I forgot to mention this when we were talking about attendance. But the way that this works, the way that we make this kind of reasonable, is that we just build in 2 free weeks of absences. So you get 6 full classes where if you're not there, you got to go catch up on it, right? You got to go watch the video at some point in time. But you can get 100% on your attendance and have missed 2 full weeks of classes. And what that means is essentially there's a big range of things that could end up happening as to why you might miss class, right? Especially now with COVID, if you're not feeling well, if you have to, deal with family commitments. If you just wake up one day and you're like, I just can't listen to him. Not again. Not today. That's understandable and that's fine. We don't need documentation for any of it. And in fact, I learned recently that we're not even allowed to ask for we can't even ask for doctor's notes. We're not allowed to do it. So it's built into the class. If, by any unfortunate circumstance, you do have more than 6 absences, and they are because of something really difficult that's going on in your life, then get in touch with me or get in touch with the TA. We'll loop in the dean of students, and we'll find a way for you guys to deal with that. But I think that's a pretty reasonable way for you guys to get credit for coming to class, for us to keep track of that sort of thing, for us to take into account any difficulty that might arise, and do so in a fairly even-handed and fair manner. Okay, what is difficult for me? This doesn't actually even make me angry. It's just I'm so bad at multitasking. I really try to read the things that come in the chat and respond to them as I can. I have a really difficult time doing it when I'm lecturing. And so if you do have questions about assignments or grades or how to find something on D2L during the lectures, just shoot a little private chat to your TA. And again, you can find who that is. Go to D2L on the homepage. There's a link that says, "Who's my TA?" It'll link to them. It has their email addresses. You're good to go there. And because they're not in the middle of talking, they can respond to you while I prattle on about whatever it is I'm talking about at the time. I will, during attendance and stuff, I'll try to get to questions that you guys come up with. What makes me really happy with you guys, we are going to have, especially on Friday, kind of minor participation things. Not necessarily that you get a grade for it or anything, but I love when you guys participate, right? If I'm asking a question, it's great. These online courses are a little bit less conducive to a fluid discussion, but they are very conducive to you being able to contribute your ideas. So put those in the chat when we do have a little bit of interactivity. Let's see, what else? I love hearing about when you engage with ancient Greece and Rome outside of the classroom, right? If you're walking around and you're like, "Dr. Rob, I saw this church and it totally looked like a Doric temple and it had triglyphs and metopes and I just saw it and I thought that was so cool." I don't know. I love hearing about when you're engaged with this sort of material on your own time. Somebody had Greek yogurt today. Hey, that's halfway there. Of course, the most important thing is leaving good reviews at the end of the course. But you've got plenty of months before that. All right. So, in honors contracts, I'm sure that you've got some of you are honors students. You absolutely will be able to take this class for honors credit. I'm in the process of writing this thing up. And I don't know the exact specifics yet, but it's going to involve virtual reality and 3D design. You don't have to have experience with any of those yet, but the basic idea is that we're going to go to the site of Delphi in ancient Greece. You're going to be responsible for some monument there. You're going to have to design that monument in 3D modeling software based on archaeological and textual sources. And then we're going to put it into a virtual reality space, and we're going to wander around the site and do presentations on it. It's going to be super cool. But just hang tight on that. I will have the actual assignment for you next week, and then you guys can go ahead and put that into I don't know, whatever portal it is where you sign up for your honors courses. And I'll actually share that with the class as well. And if anybody's interested in doing something along those lines for their final project, absolutely doing something kind of virtual reality would be a very cool direction to take it. All right, guys, so we've got like 9 minutes left. Let's go ahead and dive in to a short history of nearly everything. We will go back in time. I don't know if anybody knows where this is. This is about, 700 years back in time. We're in medieval Italy right now. This is the town of Civita di Bagno Reggio. You don't need to remember that, but it's one of the really cool sites. If you do go study abroad in Italy, you'll get a go here. It's only about half an hour from where you stay, but they call it the Dying City because of the way that the sandstone here is collapsing away, and houses are like falling off the edge of the town down into the valley below. Really, really cool stuff. But we got to go back way older than that, right? So all the way to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. Again, very, very cool. We'll cover this stuff in the second half of the class. But we have to go back way older than that. Way back to classical Greece, right? So here's the site of Delphi, and you can see down here, this is the Temple of Apollo right there. That's where the oracle would have lived, sitting in the back room with the noxious fumes floating up so that she can give her prophecies and have the priests interpret them. And then this is the theater right above that. But that's definitely not far back enough for today. We got to go all the way back to like caveman times. I miss a good diorama. And this, especially this poor guy here, this poor guy had his hand chopped off or eaten. I don't know. They don't tell you what happened to it, but we got to go back farther than that. All the way to dinosaurs, actually farther than that. Let's just start at the very, very beginning. All right. The goal here is to give you some very, very, very big picture context so that when we talk about the historical trajectory of ancient Greece and Rome and the developments that came with that, you have a sense for just how quickly and how recently that's all happening in the big scheme of things. So let's start at the very, very beginning, all right? We have got the Big Bang according to astrophysicists. This thing happened somewhere in the realm of 13.7 billion years ago. Now, I want you to think for a second, right? How does anybody know that? How do you measure the age of the universe, right? Any ideas? Anybody want to throw an idea in the chat? Stars, kind of, sort of. Dust, kind of, sort of. Aliens, that's a big one. Yep. Light years, that's kind of along the right path. Yeah. Carbon's going to come later. Texts, really old guy writing stuff down. Today I saw the Big Bang. It was really bright. Yeah, CMB. Is that like CMB? Yeah, cosmic microwave background. Yeah, that's the closest one so far. So basically, earlier in the 20th century, people peered through a telescope, right, into the sky. And what they saw was galaxies, right? And what they saw with those galaxies is the galaxies were moving. And that's not particularly surprising, right? The stars kind of look like they're moving through the sky and whatnot. But what people realized is that not only are all these galaxies moving, they're all moving away from us. And also, they're all moving away from all the other ones. So every galaxy is moving away from every other galaxy, which is kind of a difficult thing to comprehend, right? And so what that means is things are expanding. You can think of it like a balloon, right? Think of it, an uninflated balloon that you put dots on, right? and then you blow up the balloon, and all of those dots are going to get further away from all the other dots. And so that's kind of how we think of the universe right now in terms of its expansion. And what that means is, if you think about it in reverse, right? You kind of go from where we are way back, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and smaller and smaller and smaller, until you get to a single point, right? What they call the singularity. And based on the speed at which these galaxies are moving and the speed of light, they come up with that time around 13.7 billion years ago. Now, people's best explanation when this first happened, right? They actually have a pretty good idea going back to the microseconds after the bang happened, but nobody knows what happened at the exact moment or anything before it. One of the things they do know is that in those first microseconds, none of the laws of physics that we know of today, right? Things like gravity, none of that applied. They call it the inflationary period. And it's this period of things just floating around in this like energetic heat goop where none of our laws of physics apply. So anyway, that happens in the first few microseconds. 100 million years later, we get our first stars. And about 4.5 billion years ago, so what was that? About 9 billion years after the universe started, we get the formation of Earth. And we know that, right? We can come up with that date there based on rocks, because they have these radioactive elements. We know how quickly those elements decay, and we can work backwards to get to the origin of the Earth. So 4.5 billion years ago, early on, Earth was a very, very inhospitable place, right? Getting bombarded with asteroids and space junk. And then it had an atmosphere of like sulfur. You did not want to live there. But somewhat amazingly, the first life on Earth happens like pretty quickly, right? So people debate this. Paleontologists and geologists debate this sort of thing. But most people agree that it's somewhere in the realm of billions of years ago where we get the first life. And here what you're looking at are these things called stromatolites in Australia that some people point to as evidence of the earliest life. Now, when I'm talking about the earliest life, this is very uninteresting life. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that it's the first life. And in that sense, it's incredibly interesting. But like, it's not like writing books or like, it's not like going to hunt or anything like that. It's these are very, very small, simplistic organisms. Now, as we move forward, right, we've got to jump from about 4 billion years ago with the first life all the way to about 200,000 years ago, where we get the first anatomically modern humans. So when you look at Homo sapiens sapiens, right, the species and subspecies that we are today, we're generally in the realm of about 200,000 years ago. And you can see our Neanderthal cousins over here. They start a little bit earlier, and then there's a period of overlap, and there's a big debate about whether we bred with them and they became part of our genetics. And I think most people agree now that happened at least to some small extent. But about 200,000 years ago for that. And then what did humans do in those early days? Well, it takes them about 100,000 years to decide that they want to bury anybody, right? This is after we're anatomically modern. It takes 100,000 years to decide to bury somebody. And it's interesting when you think of burials, because even though we don't have any texts and we don't know exactly what we were thinking, people have proposed that we're also looking at the dawn of religion here. And then it takes them another 60,000, 70,000 years to create art, right? So the kind of cave paintings at sites like Lascaux or Chauvet, and these little like mother goddess figurines. So they date back about 30 or 40,000 years. But that's kind of sort of about it until relatively recently, okay? So from 13.7 billion years ago to 200,000 when we get modern humans. And over the course of 190,000 years of modern humans, what we end up doing, we start burying people. We paint some pictures of horses on walls, maybe create a little clay figurine, but we don't do very much. So what we're gonna do on Wednesday next week, remember no class on Monday, is we're gonna talk about the development that ended up changing everything. Now, what I want you to do for homework is watch the YouTube video that I've put up there. If you really like this big picture history, check out Bill Bryson's A Short History of Nearly Everything. It's awesome. But that is it for now. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Play around on D2L. Watch the YouTube video I put up. It's relatively short. And I will see you guys here on Wednesday, all right? So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. I'll see you back on Wednesday.